the massive structure at Giza. Across almost 5 millennia, a straightforward narrative has persisted. Pharaoh Khufu commissioned this enormous structure to serve as his final resting place. Built by countless laborers across merely 2 decades, equipped solely with rudimentary bronze implements, cordage, and unwavering resolve. Clearly, we observe substantial metalwork remaining while minimal stone surfaces show significant wear. However, a significant issue exists. Virtually all information you've encountered regarding these monuments lacks concrete factual foundation. Instead, it represents well-informed speculation at its finest. What circumstances would exist if the authentic account extends beyond incompleteness to deliberate concealment? Central to this enigma appears a singular individual, Egypt's most influential archaeological authority. Across multiple decades, Hawass exclusively has commanded every dig site, each finding, and all primordial mysteries concealed under Egypt's terrain. I reference the barrier that received closure. What motivated your decision to resurrect this hypothesis once more? The matter remains unresolved. It has concluded. Negative, the situation persists. The matter continues unresolved, gentlemen. Very well, I terminated it. Furthermore, I intend to maintain that termination. I shall present my personal perspective. Acceptable? I shall proceed accordingly. Prior to any verbal interaction, a single photograph appears and Mr. Hawass departs. Yet peculiarity emerges here. Instead of embracing novel concepts and findings, Hawass possesses notoriety for obstructing independent investigation and suppressing unconventional hypotheses, particularly those undermining the authorized account he's labored extensively to maintain. The majority of published pyramid information contains inaccuracies. The preponderance of it, most documentation, within archaeological publications, archaeological literature, genuinely excluding my contributions. Currently, I maintain no conspiratorial mindset, yet what precise rationale explains Hawass's intense opposition to particular investigations? What justification exists for terminating research precisely when revolutionary findings emerge? Findings potentially capable of transforming human historical understanding completely. Does he safeguard Egypt's cultural legacy? Alternatively, does he protect something altogether different? Should you've contemplated whether these monuments conceal more than surface appearances suggest, believe me, continued viewing proves worthwhile, because this evening we're examining thoroughly into material that's confused researchers, aggravated archaeological professionals, and rendered historical scholars unable to respond. From concealed compartments sealed across thousands of years to exactness in stonecraft challenging modern replication, the actuality underlying this structure proves significantly more peculiar and considerably more ancient than conventional Egyptology acknowledges. Could the massive Giza structure genuinely have received construction utilizing fundamental manual implements, rope systems, and timber cylinders, as historical scholars assert? Alternatively, did construction employ primordial technology we've not yet grasped? Furthermore, if accurate, who precisely constructed it and for what purpose? This evening, we'll remove concealment layers, challenge historical custodians, and expose material hidden conspicuously. Because occasionally history's paramount mysteries aren't misplaced. They're merely concealed by individuals preferring you never pose inquiries. The solutions you're approaching might transform everything. When the majority contemplate primordial Egypt, we envision gilded burial chambers, elaborate pictographic writing, and the legendary Giza massive structure ascending from wilderness terrain. Throughout the years, we've received instruction that this remarkable structure received construction approximately 2550 BCE by Pharaoh Khufu, designed as a magnificent burial monument erected by thousands of laborers equipped with scarcely more than fundamental manual implements. Superficially, this appears a remarkable illustration of primordial human accomplishment. However, here's the situation: the more closely you examine, the increasingly unconvincing this explanation genuinely becomes. Astonishingly minimal concrete material supports this prevalent historical version. Additionally, numerous assumptions might rest upon unstable foundations. Might circumstances exist where we've misinterpreted who genuinely constructed the massive Giza structure and their method of achieving such an astounding accomplishment? Contemplate this astonishing reality. Despite the massive Giza structure's incredible historical significance, no definitive inscriptions from Khufu's period explicitly declare his construction responsibility. Primordial Egyptians meticulously documented virtually all existence aspects from mundane everyday activities to intricate spiritual ceremonies and important monarchical occasions. Nevertheless, peculiarly, they failed to preserve any definitive documentation regarding constructing their most exceptional structure. Archaeological professionals occasionally cite faint markings and symbols uncovered deeply within concealed compartments. However, these received discovery hundreds of years following the structure's initial investigation, generating substantial uncertainty about their legitimacy. Ultimately, merely because someone's identification appears upon a construction doesn't necessarily indicate they're the individuals who erected it. Among the most confusing contradictions of all concerns the actual function of the massive Giza structure itself. Conventional Egyptology persistently asserts the structure received construction as Pharaoh Khufu's elaborate burial chamber. Nevertheless, unlike every additional recognized royal Egyptian burial chamber, the massive Giza structure contains 0 inscriptions glorifying Khufu, 0 ornamental objects, 0 valuable funeral possessions, and fundamentally, 0 evidence of Khufu's bodily remains. Should the structure indeed receive construction as a royal interment location, we'd anticipate extensive material like valuables, burial objects, and inscriptions characteristic of royal burial chambers. However, none of these have ever received discovery within the massive Giza structure. This remarkable absence generates a substantial inquiry. Could the structure's genuine function have been something completely different, potentially more advanced or practical than historical scholars have conventionally presumed? An even more significant enigma involves the astounding exactness and intricacy of the structure itself. Contemporary architects and construction professionals still express amazement at how accurately the massive Giza structure aligns with genuine north, exact portions of a singular degree. Within the structure, enormous granite blocks reaching 80 tons each display indication of sophisticated machining and exact drilling methodologies that appear considerably beyond what historical scholars presume primordial Egyptians could accomplish with elementary bronze implements. Construction professional Christopher Dunn meticulously investigated these granite materials, observing flawlessly circular drill cores and exceptionally exact incisions, characteristics extremely challenging if not unachievable to reproduce utilizing rudimentary techniques. Contemporary endeavors by present-day investigators to replicate these incisions with bronze chisels have failed spectacularly. Their implements rapidly became unusable, and they achieved minimal advancement even following days of persistent effort. This generates a significant inquiry. Should even contemporary technology struggle with these assignments, how did primordial Egyptians accomplish such exactness thousands of years previously? Currently, Dennis, shall we observe any advancement during our existence? Affirmative. Should you return within an hour's duration, you'd observe approximately a 4-millimeter depression into the dome structure. An equally confusing detail originates from within the structure's elaborate network of corridors and compartments. To construct such complicated internal configurations, laborers would have required dependable illumination sources to observe distinctly and maneuver securely. Conventionally, historical scholars proposed torches or petroleum lamps that supplied this illumination. Nevertheless, astonishingly, examinations of these compartments and passages display zero evidence of carbon residue, combustion deposits, or burn markings anywhere upon the upper surfaces or vertical surfaces, something that would prove unavoidable should conventional illumination techniques receive utilization. This astonishing absence challenges the traditional explanation and generates fascinating inquiries. Could the structure constructors have possessed availability to some configuration of sophisticated illumination technology? Alternatively, does this suggest a completely different construction methodology altogether? These findings propose a fascinating possibility. The original structure constructors may have possessed understanding or technology considerably more sophisticated than what conventional historical scholars currently acknowledge. Nevertheless, instead of openly contemplating these concepts, conventional archaeology, particularly under Dr. Zauhi Hawass, has powerfully protected the established historical account. Independent investigators like Robert Bauval, who suggested the Orion alignment hypothesis, proposing the structures align precisely with Orion's stellar formation as it manifested thousands of years preceding Khufu, have encountered substantial opposition. Similarly, investigators like Robert Schoch and John Anthony West have discovered fascinating geological material of extensive aquatic erosion surrounding the massive Sphinx. Actually, John Anthony West distinctly demonstrated that the unusual weathering configurations at the Sphinx's foundation were produced by substantial precipitation and streaming aquatic flows, not atmospheric or granular erosion as most Egyptological scholars characteristically propose. The Sphinx and its adjacent excavation display wear differently. These exhibit a different erosion category altogether, a circular undulating characteristic, typically produced by precipitation and torrential downpours. Here's the enigma. The final occasion sufficient precipitation existed in the Saharan wilderness to produce this degree of aquatic erosion was exceeding 12,000 years previously. Precisely at the final glacial period's conclusion, even should the restorations be completed because of aquatic deterioration, a substantial inquiry remains unanswered. When did aquatic conditions exist in the wilderness? The response proves astonishing. At the final glacial period's conclusion, approximately 12,000 years previously. This fascinating chronology suggests the Sphinx might genuinely have received construction by a considerably more ancient culture long preceding primordial Egypt, as we comprehend it even existed. West formulated his hypothesis. I contemplate the Sphinx's historical record precedes something resembling this. Long previously, before Egypt transformed into wilderness, the Giza elevation was a productive grassland. At its absolute boundary was a substantial protrusion of natural stone, an unidentified assembly of sculptors capitalizing on its conspicuous location, carved the stone into a massive countenance. May have been a deity's countenance or of the feline. Perhaps the Egyptians merely altered or reshaped something already positioned. A primordial artifact from a forgotten period. Duration elapsed. Shifting atmospheric configurations brought torrential precipitation to the region, indicating the glacial period's conclusion. The precipitation weathered the feline to virtually the configuration we observe currently. When the precipitation terminated, the formerly productive grassland transformed into Saharan wilderness. Atmospheric granules buried the sculpture, reaching its neck across thousands of years, safeguarding the form and its revealing evidence of aquatic weathering. Potentially, it received recarving. Certainly, the fourth monarchical period sovereigns who constructed the structures approximately 2500 BCE uncovered the Sphinx and additionally fashioned the countenance in their representation. Pharaoh Khafre didn't construct the Sphinx, he restored it. Nevertheless, even though this explanation receives support from concrete scientific research and is currently the most persuasive hypothesis we possess, conventional Egyptological scholars still dismiss or disregard it. Astonishingly, they haven't supplied numerous additional persuasive explanations either, leaving this compelling mystery about the Sphinx's genuine age still awaiting resolution. West's finding generated numerous inquiries. In a scholarly discussion, geological specialists sided with West. Egyptological scholars have provided minimal responses to his determinations. West genuinely is an academic's most terrible apprehension, because here arrives somebody considerably outside conventional approaches with a comprehensively well-considered, professionally presented, coherently articulated, magnificently composed, abundant with material you cannot dispute, and it removes the foundation from underneath your position. So how do they address it? They disregard it. They anticipate it'll disappear and it shall not disappear. This generates a fundamental inquiry. What explains the opposition to investigating these unconventional possibilities? Does the reluctance genuinely concern safeguarding Egypt's cultural legacy? Alternatively, could it concern maintaining professional standing, scholarly customs, or even nationalistic dignity? Should there genuinely be nothing exceptional beneath Egypt's terrain, then what explains such persistent confidentiality and unwillingness to investigate additionally? Perhaps there's sophisticated, forgotten technology concealed within the structure. Technology that could fundamentally modify our comprehension of primordial cultures, challenging all assumptions we held regarding humanity's history. As we journey more profoundly into this enigma, the solutions we uncover may demonstrate considerably more astonishing and considerably more substantial than we ever conceived. The enigma encompassing who genuinely constructed the massive Giza structure becomes even more fascinating when we venture internally, because what exists beneath the exterior proves considerably more peculiar than you'd anticipate. Typically, we're informed about merely limited compartments: the sovereign's chamber, the consort's chamber, and some connecting corridors. However, contemporary findings have exposed something astounding. The structure might be concealing considerably more than historical scholars ever recognized. During the early 1990s period, a German construction professional named Rudolf Gantenbrink generated attention by investigating narrow passages within the consort's chamber. Conduits specialists believed were exclusively symbolic, terminating nowhere. Utilizing a diminutive robotic camera meticulously guided through these restricted areas, he uncovered something exceptional. A mysterious limestone barrier fitted precisely into the passage, complete with two diminutive bronze grips. nicknamed Gantenbrink's barrier. This peculiar finding captivated the world instantaneously. And here's the significance of this discovery. Metallic attachments like these bronze grips had never received discovery anywhere additionally within the structure, suggesting this barrier safeguarded something significant. However, precisely as Rudolph and his associates were positioned to determine what existed behind it, Egyptian governmental bodies abruptly terminated their investigation without definitive explanation. Following almost a decade of public expectation, in 2002, another association sponsored by National Geographic returned. They drilled a minute opening through Gantenbrink's barrier, only to encounter another sealed limestone panel directly behind it. And remarkably, that subsequent barrier remains uninvestigated to this present day. Despite repeated petitions from investigators globally, additional investigation continues to receive denial by Egyptian governmental bodies. This abrupt opposition at such a fundamental point naturally generates the inquiry. What's behind the persistent caution? Are officials genuinely concerned about safeguarding primordial valuables, or is there something additional they prefer to maintain concealed? Then in 2017, the fascination intensified even additionally. An association of international researchers utilized cutting-edge technology called muon radiography, essentially a sophisticated category of cosmic particle scanning, to examine the structure's interior without disturbing it. The outcomes were astounding. They uncovered an enormous concealed void positioned precisely above the Grand Corridor, a massive, previously unrecognized compartment sufficiently large to equal all the recognized compartments within the structure. Nevertheless, there's zero visible entrance, and zero individual possesses any indication what its function might be. Researchers immediately proclaimed this as among the most substantial archaeological findings in decades. However, once more, petitions for deeper investigation have been persistently denied by Egyptian governmental bodies, referencing unclear concerns about security and conservation. Beyond these concealed compartments and sealed passages, physical material within the structure itself challenges conventional perspectives. Investigators, including construction professional Christopher Dunn, have thoroughly documented markings and configurations that distinctly display indication of sophisticated tooling. Dunn closely investigated granite blocks in the sovereign's compartment, observing flawlessly drilled openings and exactness markings consistent with sophisticated machinery considerably beyond the capability of elementary bronze chisels. Granite ranks among Earth's most resistant materials. Fundamental primordial implements would rapidly deteriorate or fracture completely. So, how precisely could primordial constructors accomplish this thousands of years previously? All these peculiar findings, concealed compartments, mysterious barriers, exactness tooling, propose something exceptional. Perhaps the structure's constructors possessed availability to sophisticated technology. Alternatively, maybe they inherited understanding from a considerably more ancient culture lost to historical record. Nevertheless, despite these fascinating possibilities, conventional archaeology maintains a cautious, even protective approach to additional investigation. It might merely be that archaeological professionals are concerned about safeguarding Egypt's cultural legacy from sensational assertions. However, this caution may unintentionally prevent us from uncovering vital realities concealed precisely beneath our position. Ultimately, we're remaining with several persuasive enigmas. What mysteries are concealed behind those sealed limestone barriers? What function does the massive concealed compartment uncovered in 2017 serve? And could investigating these concealed areas finally expose who genuinely constructed the massive Giza structure and their method of accomplishing this astounding achievement? With so numerous enigmas still concealed deeply within the massive Giza structure, one individual stands resolutely between us and the solutions. Dr. Zai Hawass, the gentleman whose determinations have configured not solely what the public comprehends about primordial Egypt, but more significantly, what we don't. Across decades, Hawass has dominated Egyptian archaeological work, charismatic, vocal, and intensely protective of Egypt's primordial cultural legacy. He's occupied powerful positions like Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities and Minister of Antiquities. These positions have granted him unequaled authority over who receives authorization to excavate, what investigation can be performed, and ultimately which findings ever observe daylight. However, behind his passionate advancement of Egyptian culture exists a considerably darker actuality, an inflexible and confidential system that has persistently obstructed investigators attempting to challenge established historical accounts. Currently, Supporters of Hawass could contend he's merely protecting Egypt's invaluable valuables from speculative or irresponsible hypotheses. However, could there be another, more disturbing possibility? Could Hawass's strict regulation intentionally maintain particular realities, concealed to conserve comfortable, established historical accounts, safeguarding professional standing, scholarly customs, or even Egypt's nationalistic dignity? Let me comprehend what you contemplate in the observations below when this presentation is concluded, because by meticulously determining who can investigate and exactly what can be publicly exposed, Hawass has effectively positioned himself as the ultimate custodian of Egyptian historical record, potentially suppressing findings capable of rewriting our complete comprehension of the primordial world. Hawass's reputation is complicated. On one perspective, he has passionately advanced Egyptian culture, dramatically elevating Egypt's global prominence. However, this influence may have arrived at an unseen expense. His restrictive policies might unintentionally, or perhaps intentionally, have prevented fundamental investigation and finding, leaving fundamental realities about primordial Egypt still concealed beneath the terrain. This leaves us with a disturbing inquiry. Is Dr. Zahi Hawass genuinely safeguarding Egypt's cultural legacy? Alternatively, is he protecting something additional? Mysteries that could rewrite historical records completely. Until Egyptian archaeological work embraces genuine openness, we may never comprehend precisely what's concealed behind those meticulously protected barriers. With these inquiries still persisting, let's investigate some unconventional hypotheses that conventional archaeology appears reluctant to address. Independent investigators have uncovered persuasive material that challenges the authorized account we've always received instruction. Previously, we mentioned Dr. Robert Schoch's fascinating findings on the Sphinx, proposing its origins might extend considerably beyond accepted chronologies, potentially linked to a more ancient, forgotten culture. Constructing on this possibility is Robert Bauval's exceptional Orion alignment hypothesis. Bauval observed something exceptional. The three principal structures at Giza flawlessly reflect the stellar points of Orion's formation, but not as they manifested during Pharaoh Khufu's sovereignty. Instead, their configuration exactly matches the constellation's location approximately 500 BCE, thousands of years earlier than conventional historical record accepts. This isn't probably merely a coincidence. Orion possessed profound importance in primordial Egyptian culture, symbolizing the deity Osiris, sovereign of the afterlife, regeneration, and the eternal sequence of existence and mortality. Should Bauval's hypothesis maintain accuracy, it could indicate the structure constructors possessed an advanced comprehension of celestial science, deliberately encoding their structures with stellar significance. Understanding historical scholars characteristically believe primordial Egyptians merely didn't possess, extending things even additionally. Some investigators propose Egypt's remarkable structures might genuinely connect backward to a considerably more ancient, lost culture, one with sophisticated technology and capabilities considerably surpassing anything historical scholars currently acknowledge. Construction professional Christopher Dunn thoroughly examined the granite blocks within the massive Giza structure and uncovered indications of exact drilling markings and sophisticated implement incisions that rudimentary bronze chisels merely couldn't generate. Granite is remarkably resistant, and even with contemporary manual implements, exact incisions like Dunn observed would be complicated. Could primordial Egyptians genuinely have managed such elaborate craftsmanship with fundamental implements? Alternatively, were they assisted by technologies from another culture completely? Another confusing contradiction encompasses how the Egyptians transported enormous granite blocks to the structure location. Some of these massive materials weigh reaching 80 tons each, and their origin was positioned exceeding 500 meters distant from the Giza elevation. Conventional historical scholars have supplied zero persuasive explanation for how primordial Egyptians could have relocated these immense materials across such extensive distances, particularly without the assistance of circular devices or sophisticated machinery. Even currently, transporting materials of this dimension and mass would present exceptional logistical challenges requiring substantial equipment, specialized transport mechanisms, and extensive organization. This substantial gap in the conventional account generates an obvious inquiry. How precisely could primordial constructors have accomplished what would still be remarkably challenging for contemporary construction professionals? Graham Hancock expands on this hypothesis, suggesting that there was formerly a sophisticated global culture, currently forgotten, lost due to a devastating global catastrophe or gradual deterioration. Hancock references archaeological locations globally, notably Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a remarkable complex of sanctuaries dating backward approximately 12,000 years as material of this vanished culture. Hancock proposes that the advanced understanding possessed by these primordial individuals wasn't lost completely. Rather, surviving portions were transmitted downward, eventually influencing the early Egyptians. Investigators like John Anthony West and Dr. Robert Schoch echo this perspective, proposing the Egyptians didn't spontaneously formulate their remarkable architectural, celestial, and mathematical abilities overnight. Instead, they suggested that these sophisticated capabilities were inherited from a considerably more ancient culture, explaining the reason primordial Egyptian civilization appears to emerge abruptly, completely configured and advanced, rather than gradually formulating across duration. Although conventional Egyptology characteristically dismisses these hypotheses as improbable or even unachievable, increasing material makes them progressively challenging to disregard. Contemplate, for instance, the mysterious Osirian sanctuary at Abydos. Erected from massive granite blocks, this configuration displays sophisticated exactness and craftsmanship matching what we've observed within the massive Giza structure capabilities, supposedly beyond the capacity of early Egyptians. Similarly, the massive granite containers at the Serapeum of Saqqara display exceptional exactness that would challenge even contemporary modern machinery, let alone Bronze period implements. These exceptional findings substantially challenge the established historical account about primordial Egypt, suggesting concealed layers of historical record still awaiting uncovering. Is it conceivable that conventional archaeology has disregarded, or perhaps intentionally ignored, material indicating a more ancient, highly sophisticated culture behind Egypt's most legendary structures? If accurate, who precisely were these mysterious constructors? And how did they possess understanding and technology considerably beyond their period? Following examining closely at all material we've investigated, the confusing absence of inscriptions distinctly linking Pharaoh Khufu to the massive Giza structure, the remarkably exact stonecraft that appears considerably too sophisticated for elementary implements, sealed compartments still awaiting opening, and material suggesting a considerably more ancient origin, we're remaining questioning the authorized historical version we've always received instruction. These fascinating findings propose that the structure's constructors probably possessed understanding and methodologies considerably more sophisticated than conventional historical record grants them recognition for. While this concept might appear unusual initially, each novel indication we discover makes it more credible. Perhaps the primordial Egyptians comprehended more than we recognize, and their sophisticated methodologies were merely lost across duration. Alternatively, maybe these structures were genuinely erected by an earlier culture whose capabilities were transmitted downward or adapted by the Egyptians subsequently. However, should these concepts be so fascinating, what explains conventional archaeology still reluctant to investigate them comprehensively? One rationale is that accepting a more ancient, more sophisticated culture could indicate drastically modifying the account we currently accept. Historical scholars, archaeological professionals, and even complete nations have constructed their identities and standing surrounding the conventional chronology. Rewriting historical publications, exhibition displays, and profoundly maintained concepts isn't straightforward. For Egypt, acknowledging that its renowned structures might predate their recognized culture, or might not be exclusively Egyptian constructions, addresses sensitive matters of nationalistic dignity and identity. By opposing deeper investigation into concealed compartments, primordial technologies, and unconventional historical explanations, conventional archaeology may unintentionally be maintaining significant realities concealed beneath the wilderness terrain. Envision if we discovered definitive material beneath Egypt's wilderness of a sophisticated culture forgotten by historical record. Such a finding wouldn't merely modify our perspective of Egypt. It could transform our complete comprehension of the human historical record, challenging all assumptions we've presumed about our ancestors and the remarkable accomplishments they might have achieved. Positioned at the threshold of these profound enigmas, we must inquire ourselves, will archaeological professionals finally access these sealed barriers and investigate what's concealed internally? Alternatively, will the mysteries of the massive Giza structure remain secured away, awaiting future generations courageous enough to pursue the reality? For more primordial enigmas, Be certain to examine our additional presentations and subscribe to Forbidden Fathoms as we continue investigating the fascinating accounts historical record still possesses remaining to expose. Appreciation for viewing, and as always, until subsequent occasions, remain secure.